Okay, welcome everyone for chapter 7. Jill is leading today, and I think the title of the chapter is Hope, the Door of Hope Ajar. All right, take it away, Jill.
Hi, everyone. This was a good chapter. I actually kind of really enjoyed this chapter. I went through it once or twice, and when I went through it once, I thought, oh, well, this is, pretty straightforward. And then I went through it again and went, no, it's not. So lots of questions came up, and which sparked more questions and everything else. So, which is good. So I don't think we'll get through all of it, but let's see where we end up. Okay, so the first question is on answering. I kind of named the questions. It just felt right. So it's on answering prayers. And the quote is, my brother. It was, and I always can't pronounce his name, Myhanene, who replied.
I think it's Myhanene.
Myhanene? Is it Myhanene? That's easier.
That's how I hear Mary pronounce it.
Myhanene. Okay.
Myhanene.
No fervent prayer should be possible either here or on the earth without its definite and visible reply. When in the other life you preferred a request to your friend or father, reverse that, did you not expect such an answer? That was on page 75, last paragraph. So what examples can we think of when we prayed that were answered, our prayers were answered, and when can we think of examples of when our prayers weren't answered? Did we notice a difference in the ones that were, like how we prayed and the ones that were answered and to the ones that weren't answered? And then how do you feel about prayers being answered, definite and visible? Michaela.
Hi. I found with this quote that you chose that the key word was fervent. And then I just sort of was reflecting on the past when I've had prayers and whether I felt they've been answered or not. And I remember when we were first learning about, or when I was first learning about God and feelings through Jesus, I felt like I would pray, but I had no idea how to make it fervent and how to actually make it something more than intellectual. And I remember feeling really stuck and really angry in that place, because Jesus would be telling us, well, you just need to pray. And I'm like, well, that's nice. I've got no idea how to do that. And so then I was kind of asking the question, well, how did that change for me? Because more now I can see that my prayers are answered to some capacity. And that's it. But so then I was reflecting, okay, what is it that changed for me? And I was realizing that it was about developing a trust for God so that I was prepared to be fervent and to be really open and transparent with God. And for me, that came through really starting to become more present to nature, because that was the physical way that I was able to start to recognize God's goodness and to develop trust for God. So that was the process I went on with that quote.
That's lovely. That's a really good example of the sort of the differences, right? The fervent is sort of the key, and what that. So what did fervent mean to you? Is that an okay question to ask? I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me it kind of means that I'm crying when I'm praying. At the moment, that seems to be like when I'm really actually in my emotion, and I guess you can have a fervent prayer when you're in anger, if you're honestly in anger, maybe, I don't know. But for me, I know that when I'm really crying and asking, there's excitement, because I'm like, okay, I know this is going to happen, this one.
Okay,
yeah,
excellent.
You sound like you're also speaking about faith.
Definitely, yeah. Like to even ask the question and to be prepared to put that emotion into it, it's come through development.
But then when you say, okay, this time it's going to happen, that's faith.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And there's the faith you've developed by being in nature, which help you to start believing in God's goodness. That's faith.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Selena.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about this chapter at all. So, and the questions just kind of made me uncomfortable. It's like, I guess I just got to a place where I just feel like I'm just still practicing praying, and I seem to have progress and things move forward, and I have aha moments, and I don't know if I prayed in a way to, right, like the way to make that happen. Like I haven't really felt like I've had a direct experience of praying and then this happened exactly the way I thought it would happen because I prayed however I prayed. So, but I'm trying. That's why I feel like I'm trying as fervently, and I feel like that also, as I keep trying, increases. And I feel like I'm getting to learn how to do it. It's like I just feel like I'm learning it. Like I don't feel like I can give any definitive answers about it yet.
what judgment are you having about yourself that you feel your prayers, your technique is?
I don't know.
There's a judgment going on.
I guess I think about Paget, you know, I don't know if it's judgment, like, because they're constantly trying to pray, learn how to pray to receive more love. Like they're learning. It's a learning process. That's what I'm gathering about praying. So I guess I found it hard to quantify or qualify it, my praying, because I don't know yet exactly what's going on with my praying.
I'd be curious what the judgment you have about yourself about it.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've been the recipient of a prayer experiment from Robin's group, and I knew somebody prayed for me. I don't know who, but I felt going, somebody just prayed for me. I just had A, B, C, D, E. And then I documented what I experienced from Selena's prayer. So she know what happened to me. Like there's proof right there from everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but what's this?
I guess
kind of,
for me, is there's no like specificity eludes me about it. I just know things happen, good feelings happen, and through prayer. But as far as kind of nailing it down, I just don't feel like that. I don't feel that yet.
okay.
Any sense?
Okay.
And I guess
Thank
that's
you.
why I was uncomfortable with some of the stuff until I got to there, and I was like, okay, still learning all this stuff, learning how to do it, you know.
Okay, so
We're
let's
all
put it
learning.
this way. If your prayer was, because obviously in this, to continue on this discussion, well, if my prayer was correct, it would have been answered. So what's wrong with my prayer that it's not being answered is what I feel is the subtext here. So what would you feel about yourself if you had a prayer and boom, it got answered? The way that you perceive, like, oh, there's a prayer and it's exactly the exact quantity and all of that. What would you feel about yourself?
Well, that I've learned it, that I've learned how to be fervent.
Okay,
How
so what are you? So you're judging yourself
the
that you're
desire.
not. There you go.
Yeah, not
Okay.
necessarily desire. You know, like that's all that.
Can I use the word? You're judging yourself that you think you're not sincere.
Yeah. That whole.
Okay.
That it
That's a
would be more
judgment.
obvious, right? If I had the appropriate amount of fervor or desire, it would be more
In a judgment.
evident.
Ouch.
Hmm?
Ouch. That's a judgment.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alicia.
Hi. Well, I have a little bit of maybe a mixture between Michaela and Selena, in that I noticed that the less I think about praying and the more I'm just allowing myself to be in a pure desire in that moment, the more those things seem to come to fruition without me really having to think too much about it. I acted because, oh, that's what I want. That's really what I want to do. And I feel a desire to do that. And then I'm surprised that the prayer is answered, not necessarily how I think it's going to be answered. It's sometimes like, oh, wow, that happened because I did this. But I noticed that definitely the fervent or desire, I would perhaps use desire as well. When I'm in that desire, it's answered. When I'm in my head, and I am often in my head, I can feel myself being in addictive neediness. I'm almost like in a demand, but I mean, I want this to happen now. And I want it the way I want it to happen. And often I think that I don't always recognize when actually I do have a definite and visible answer. Because I'm not aware that that person who just screamed at me was a definite answer to help me get to the next little bit that actually I desired. So I think there's a part of me just waking up to noticing everything as well. But definitely, I also have that thing when in nature, and also when I'm moving, I find it much easier when I'm in movement, whether I might be walking, but I might be at home and I'm just choosing to move, that I find it easier to get in touch with that desire to be in prayer somehow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You brought up a good point as far as not recognizing the answer, or being in the addiction to expect the answer. And I think we kind of go through the further paragraphs, kind of go through that. But it's a good distinction to make.
Yeah.
And especially when we if we say a prayer, it's sometimes we don't expect the answer, and that's when the answer comes. I don't know how to explain it, but
yeah,
you know,
I feel that in the Michaela mentioned about the tears come up. I've had that's happened very often. I'm like, oh! And then it's like without me thinking to pray, but it's like I have it somehow, it's answered in that I feel so held or whatever it is in that moment. So but yeah, so it does come through that grief for me, but it also comes through like my curiosity or my wonder and awe at something. It comes through, but it definitely has this desire, faith background to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm hearing is the childlike nature,
Yeah,
that innocence. And another thing I'm hearing is the surrender. You pray and then you surrender.
Yeah.
So maybe there is that element, just like in the magnetic corral, when we'll have the conversations coming up, there was a pause, which is, in our perspective, with all of our addictions, we'll have to call it surrender.
Yeah.
Celine Dion's song Surrender has been ringing my head all day. I finally just put on a karaoke version and just sang it, going, why is the song in my head? I will sing it.
I've had that. I had this.
That was 20 minutes ago.
I had that, Mila, 2 mornings this week. I woke up with it and put it on straight away. I surrender. Yeah, I know it.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Can I? Oh, you
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, you want me to go ahead? Well, I came up with specific examples. So when I wanted to be a doctor my whole childhood, and then it was taken away from me. There was some family sabotage. So it was completely gone. It's like gone. It will never happen for me. I was 18 or 19. So I completely dropped it. And then more things happened to me. And then I'm around 29, 30. No, I'm around 29, 28, 29. And a friend of mine said, you know, the way you are based on your nature, you're like a naturopathic doctor. It just seems to be like what you are. And I looked into naturopathic schools. There was one in Seattle and one in Toronto. And I said, yeah, well, that's not going to happen for me. One, require US money and travel to Seattle, once in Toronto. I give it up again. Looking back after, I realized that at around the same time when I was having that desire and I gave up, a couple of people in BC came together and formed the Naturopathic School at the same time. Like a couple of months after that season, after that period, they literally formed a school here that fit everything that I needed to make it happen. So that's one example, and also it's an example of a very strong desire I've had that I gave up many times. Somehow came back, and I had another chance to have that dream fulfilled. Is a very strong faith building experience for me. That somebody remembers what I wanted, even if I give it up, and made it happen again.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And I think we're all glad that you did that.
We'll see. A few more addictions to go. We'll see.
Alicia.
It was just from the way Mila was sharing that I was thinking about, so we're in a material world, so the prayer's going out there, but it's not material. So maybe it takes some time. Sometimes maybe it takes some time, like, okay, we need to move like a cogs in a clock. Chuk, 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 chuk. Oh, now this, okay, now we can. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I feel that too. Like, I feel that there's some points, like I need to release some addiction or process some more in order for me to be able to step into another desire of mine. And I've felt that too. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Michaela.
It just left me, but it was about the physical, like that we live in the physical. Oh yeah, like the question of how do you feel about the fact that it's visible and that there are signs. So I was sort of like, my first thought was, okay, well, I'm not looking the right way. How's the right way to look? And then I was thinking that the more in my life that I'm surrounding myself with things that are in harmony with God. So for me at the moment, that's nature, and the way that I want to build my house. And I think, if you're surrounded by concrete, then how is God able to reflect back to you an answer? So like, because I was thinking it depends on your prayer as well. Like if I'm praying for you, Jill, and you don't want to budge, then the answer won't be shown to me until you're ready to budge to be able for me to see the response of the prayer. So I feel like one time I prayed to God about the stars and I saw the answer straight away, whereas sometimes when I pray about people, you're dealing with a whole different ability for God to reflect it back to you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Well, you'd be dealing with all their addictions too, and their demands and all of their blocks and everything else, right? So yeah.
And free will, like, yeah, God can't force you to answer my prayer.
Yeah, shocking. Absolutely. Cool, thank you. Mike.
I'm gonna take my video off so that my vocal doesn't break up. That's why I'm gonna go black. I don't have a good report. It's I've prayed for divine love and I've received divine love, and I know that's something that I can't create in myself, and that feeling of openness and just the tears and just the turning yourself inside out. I felt that, and okay, so then talking about divine truth is sometimes emotions come up, but I feel that connection again. And I think being honest now, I'm feeling a little of that too. I am feeling some of that too. But overall, I can't use prayer as a tool. I can't say when it works. So I go, well, I must not have the desire. And I also think, well, I must also have, and then prayer seems so easy that I think, well, maybe I'm expecting an answer that I'm not getting. I'm looking the wrong way for an answer. And also that it seems like my soul is always talking to God, and so God is always responding to me. So then am I always in a prayer state, although maybe not with intention? And so should I always be getting what my soul is asking for? So I wish I had more of a Michaela experience, but I'm more of a I don't have the grasp of it yet. And so dealing with emotions and authenticity and desire seems like more of a fertile ground for me before I make a big reach and try to talk to God. So that's my comment. And if I just stayed silent, I wouldn't get any feedback that would help me. So I'm also throwing that out so that so I can change this, because it's not the way to go through life. And,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I agree that prayer's hard. It's something that I think we all struggle with. And it seems that it has brought up not being able to pray like the examples that we've seen in the book is it's brought up some anger for me. It's like, well, why does it work for them and not for me? Right. So absolutely. It's a good lead into the next question, as far as if we should expect everything that our soul wants and desires, we should expect to have it. Well, is that a demand? Is it an addiction? Is it true? But those are all really good questions. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. Absolutely.
In the talk, Introduction to Prayer, Jesus has done, he had talked about God answering the prayer to remove the cause, not to remove the effect. There's something like that. But my personal motto is just pray. God either listens or not. There's no penalty.
That's true. I mean,
so you can't go wrong.
And prayer can be like a conversation to God, right? It's sometimes it feels like it's a one-sided conversation, and sometimes it feels like you're actually getting answers. But it's still a conversation, right?
Well, it kind of brings up the opportunity for, like, I like to make a list of issues that comes up. So I feel my prayers are not being answered. Well, then what does that bring up? What kind of emotion comes up for you? And then you can ask, is it true that my prayers aren't answered? And then you can ask, you guide, oh God, can you show me, give me, remind me that you did answer my prayers? Because you gotta want to see it. And when I was reading this chapter and answering the question, I realized I don't want answers because I don't want to get emotional. I'm still just a tad angry about something from my childhood, and that if I actually wanted all the answers, I would then go, okay, fine, you were there after all. Okay, like then I got no reason to be angry with you anymore. But I'm not done being angry, so no, thank you. So I could feel that feeling inside of me going, I don't want to know, because it's just going to bring all these emotions up. So
Absolutely.
when it comes to God and prayers, emotions are going to be involved. But that kind of sets up a set of experiment if you want to do that you want to see signs that prayers were answered, and you'll start to get memories. You'll start to get the answers in the next few days and weeks. Yeah.
Point. Absolutely. Yeah. Very cool. All right. So my personal experience, as far as with prayers, my I only have one example of, at least that I can think of, that is like a full-on blatant, definite and visible example is in one night of crying, like Michaela, I asked God to help me release what I need to release in order to find my soulmate. What do I, in order to find love and my soulmate? And the next day, I met John. So it was, I'm not saying that he's my soulmate. I'm saying that he is here to, and I have learned a lot from him and from our relationship and everything. I've a tremendous amount. And I know that there's a tremendous amount more to learn. But that is my one example of it. So awesome. Okay, so let's move on to question number 2. And we've kind of started to go into this a little bit as well, but question number 2, we expect proof. But you have no direct evidence that your prayer rose higher than the roof of the room in which it was breathed. What you consider an answer from God was nothing more than an act of humanity on the part of your fellow creatures. And this is on page 76, about halfway down. So how many prayers have we said and mistook the answer from, or mistook them answered by luck, happenstance, and humanity, or and whatever else, just by the memories like we were talking about, or by somebody yelling at me, you know, something like that. That was, that could be an answer to the prayer. So how can we become more sensitive to God's answers? Lisa.
I'm thinking about what a friend of mine did, and she started logging her specific intentions or prayers or emotions she worked through, and then she would notice any law of event changes and log that alongside of it in her journal. So she kind of did that for a while. I don't know if she still does it. I tried it for about a month. It was amazing to kind of see, oh, there are little law of attraction changes happening with these emotions releasing and my desire, you know, being expressed. And so I think that's something that's very faith building that could help us become more aware of looking like, okay, what's changing in my law of attraction, if anything, or yeah.
That's a great idea. That's a really great idea, and kind of puts the proof right in front of you, and helps you see this. I prayed for this, and this is what happened. Wasn't what I expected, but this is what happened. So yeah, that's very cool. That's a very good suggestion. Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Virginia.
With that question, I have another question.
Excellent.
And so, because it's discussing how when it's an act of humanity, well, how do I know that's not the answer to my prayer being through them? Like, how do I know? I can't figure out that part right now. Like that it's sometimes when you think that maybe that person was somehow inspired to do what they did, and it's really that appears to be the answer to your prayer and it not being. How do I know that it's not really the answer?
I'd like the example that the book gave, as far as, you know, if there's a famine and you are praying to God to give food to these people, how is God supposed to give food to these people? Through the humanity of others, is what I got from it anyways. So humanity can very easily be the answer to the prayer. But we have to become more sensitive to it, to say, oh, there was my answer to my prayer. You know, or the vision that I got when I was reading some of the rest of the chapters, or some of the rest of the paragraphs, was, well, is God supposed to just rain money down from the heavens to solve the problem of the famine, kind of thing? And it's like, well, no, that would be nice. I'm going to pray for famine all the time. But that's not the answer. The answer would be through the humanity of others. But I don't know if it would be answered in the expectations that we have. And I think that's where I get stuck anyways. That's totally where I get stuck.
Oh, okay. So it's in how I would expect it, that I would be praying with a specific outcome in my mind already, or having a specific outcome. Is that what you mean? And that it could come to me in another way? I'm confused by it, because it's like when it says that that your prayer, no direct evidence that your prayer rose any higher than the roof from which it came from. You know what I mean? Like that confuses me as far as.
Yeah. I think what I took it as was that if we're expecting something very definite to happen, so if we're on this prayer of famine, if we're expecting God to just solve famine, solve this hunger that this village has, that answer may not, or that expectation may not come. So that prayer, if I was just going to pray, God fix the famine, that prayer might not get higher than the roof of your house or the room that you're in. But if I pray that for assistance for these people, or how can I help these people, this is kind of what I'm getting from it. How in a prayer similar to that, then there's no expectation there, but others may come and help, bring food or whatever to this village to pray. But that may not be the answer to my prayer the way that I expected it. And I think I think where I got confused in this paragraph is the expectations versus and demands versus how God answers. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm sorry, Virginia. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we can't. I mean, we can't. Don't put the expectation that you should have an answer. Like, this is about prayer. Are you kidding? This is like probably the one that will take the longest to understand. But the journey of understanding prayer is gotta be the best use of your energy. You bring the best yield. So I would suggest the introduction to prayer talk that Jesus did, I think 2012. I mean, that lets a fire under my butt every time. I can't even watch it. I just have to read it because I get too excited. Quite a few ideas in there. When I'm praying for people, I wait till I get emotional. There's something about the situation that gets me emotional. That's the prayer. So it could be that, and usually my emotion involves a dash of anger. It has to be there. It's gonna happen. But until the emotion gets stirred, it's probably not a prayer. And then the other thing that's brought up with that example of the food, I think in the example Myhanene gave, that if, let's say, a group of people prayed about famine in their community, then one member of the group just happened to make £10,000 more. Surprise! That was how he could have contributed to the situation. So those who are praying somehow get to be involved in being part of the solution. But then if we are removing costs, so for example, if we're praying about famine and people in industrial nation, we're part of the cause of causing it, then we're going to get inspired to work on our demands that's creating their famine. So you never know when you get inspired to work through an addiction, just how far that goes, how much of an answer it is to some prayer. So I'm just thinking, because it's about removing cause, and if our addictions are the cause, our addictions are got to go. So I'm just throwing a whole bunch of stuff here. that could be a way to answer some of the questions. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
But I feel like, I think what will really help us to have a conversation with God is to actually ask, can you show me more? Can you teach me more? Can you show me how my prayer was answered specifically in the past, because it builds your faith, and then you start to look for it in the future. But then it will also answer the question of, I had a prayer to show up in a certain way. It didn't show up that way, but it showed up in a different way. What was that about? That could be a good question to explore. Why didn't it show up the way I wanted? I wanted to be a doctor that goes to India to study medicine back when I was 18. That didn't happen. But I ended up becoming a naturopathic doctor here in Canada, which was way better. Way better. I was so much happier. So who's to say?
I had a question in that as you were talking. Now I forgot it. So I will.
I mean, these are the places where make a list of your question and then set them up. Set them up and let's start some experiment exercise. Like journaling, I had a prayer and I had this emotion and then this outcome. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to start doing that actually, because noticing how prayers were answered, or when I prayed, how they were answered. My question was, becoming more sensitive. Like, okay, I said this prayer, I was expecting this outcome, but it was this outcome that I had. How do we recognize that was actually the answer when we're still kind of focused on, this is what I'm looking for? And I think that was where the question kind of came in, is how can we be more sensitive that this was actually the answer to my prayer, but I'm still focused that this is my answer. I'm still looking for this answer.
One of them would be the feeling of demand you have of, I asked for this, but then that showed up. What the hell is going on? Get those emotions out. You may have to release those emotions before you can receive, because there's some anger, some hurt here about, I wanted this, but you gave me that. What? What's the big idea? Feel those things.
I've had lots of questions with God about that one.
Let them out so that you can make room to receive the answer.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Alicia.
Yeah, on that note, I think, for example, if I'm more grateful for something, whatever it is, I feel I recognize things more. But often before I get to that gratitude, I have to be pissed off because I haven't actually seen why that actually has happened to me. But then when I get to the gratitude, I realize, oh, wow, that was a part of my prayer being answered. And in the past, all the time, I would just think it's a coincidence, but I would like to switch the word to, no, it's coinciding energy. That's how it's meant to be. There's something come together here to show me the next step to take. And I was thinking about every time, as you mentioned about emotions and passions, every time we're passionate about something or getting emotional, somehow that is a prayer without us necessarily saying, I'm going to say a prayer. Like Jesus talks about people praying, thank you for my food. And he's like, my prayer is the way I eat. I'm like happy to eat and joyful about my eating. So in a way, somehow we're praying all the time. But I think, as Lisa first brought up about that logging and becoming more aware of it and asking those questions to know what's going on, so that we have more faith, because it seems like they're twins, really, faith and prayer. And because there's many times I've been in many places, countries and different places where there's a lot of people, people in very poor situations. What can I do? But I can pray. And if I've already built a little faith, I will trust that something is happening already. I may have no clue about what's going on, So I need to build the little bits of faith that I've experienced in order to be able to then therefore pray for all those other situations. And just as you said, Jill, becoming more sensitive and becoming more aware of being grateful for everything, even if we're pissed off initially about it.
From what I've learned, you will act on whatever you have faith in. So if you have a corrupt faith, you'll act on it. And if you have a good faith, you're going to act on it. So yeah, if you have a faith, whatever you see, just pray, something will happen. You will do it. You'll actually then ask, you'll actually pray.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a faith building. It's definitely what, because then it becomes like an automatic machine. It just kicks in all the time. You're going to act on it, whatever way your faith is.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Nope. Okay, so let's move on to question 3. So what are we waiting for is sort of the gist I got from this. This is actually on page 77 at the top paragraph. As to necessity of visible signs on earth, we are not called upon to decide. It is sufficient for us that we are ordained in the beginning and have never yet been abrogated. I had to look up what abrogated means. In the revelation made by Jesus, the question of its completeness, we must be content to waive for the present. Visible signs formed a prominent feature to which he appealed for confirmation of his mission. He promised also they should follow those who believe for a similar attestation. His promise was redeemed in the history of the early church. Such visible signs were intended and ought to be witnessed of the same today. So, I'm confused by this paragraph. It feels like he's explaining that they're waiting for something to happen on earth, or explaining that the proof was given and now they're just waiting to see what we do with it. So I was very confused. Maybe I'm way off base here, but I was very confused by this paragraph. So what are your thoughts on this paragraph? Alicia. Oh, you're on. Yeah.
I haven't honestly got loads of thoughts about it, but what came up for me as the proof were the prophets and the prophecies that have been quashed in the past, but that felt like it was an attestation of what's been in the past, that as a proof. But I don't have very much more to say about that at the moment.
So then are we waiting for the proof of those prophecies?
Well, I think that we have the proof, and I feel like we're only waiting because it's sort of been shut down by religions, that mediumistic ability to receive messages, be more aware of prayers and not have to go through an organization. So I feel it's just the waiting is just simply about people waking up actually to the fact that this exists and this is available to us now.
Okay, that makes a little more sense. Yeah, I can see that for sure. Thank you. Michaela.
Yeah, I got a similar thing to Alicia, that what it's just saying is that the prayers were answered in the past, they're still answered now. It's just a matter of our perspective and how we're looking and whether we're seeing the answers to the prayers.
Could it be, so I want to, could it be that you're saying that they seek, like Jesus asked for confirmation, he asked for signs, he asked for visible signs. Is it that we can again now ask for visible signs? Is that what the paragraph is saying, that they're waiting for us to want to see visible signs again? That those kind of visible signs can be given now if we seek it. Is that what that is? Or am I mean, that paragraph is confusing, so I'm trying to figure it out.
I think,
No.
and that's further on as well, but yes, to answer your question, I think we always could ask for visible signs, but so taking that paragraph on its own is confusing. And what Michaela said about the visible signs were shown before, they're still available, but then if you add in the next two paragraphs, it actually talks about building injury upon injury and about how the church has mistaken what Jesus has said and what the Bible says and that kind of thing, that because of that, we have to release our beliefs on that before we could see visible signs.
Right. Okay, I like that. Okay. Release church or religious-based fears, and that messages were given once, the word of God is done, God isn't talking to us anymore, go back to the books, and like that kind of errors, right? Like we have to release, although if you're receiving signs now, then that's the devil speaking to you, or
well, maybe, I don't know.
This could be some of the errors we have absorbed.
I think it's some of the errors that we've absorbed.
Exactly.
And then the errors that we've generationally have absorbed, that are now have our false beliefs, our corrupt faith, in that. Yeah. Sorry, Michaela, did you want to sort of add into that at all?
Well, I was just thinking it's not only those errors, it's any errors that we have that cause us to see the world the way that we see it, because we're so filtered in the way we perceive everything, and whilst we've got those filters, we're missing it all. I feel like it's all around us, the answers are right there, it's just whether or not we're open to seeing the way that God sees.
Right, absolutely. That would be pretty amazing if we could see the earth the way that God sees it, like, and how it was actually designed, how is it supposed to work, how are we supposed to take care of it, all of it. Like, I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah,
I keep having these images of, like, you make a prayer for someone and you're looking over there and behind you these flowers just bloom, but and we're just not noticing these delicate responses that we get from God, because we're not delicate and we're not soft, we're harsh. Yeah.
Awesome.
I like that.
I like
so
that
basically,
a lot too.
Basically, you guys are saying what they're waiting for is for us to start noticing the sign, because they've always been there. Is that okay? Got it.
Yeah. Alicia.
Yeah, from what Mila and Michaela said, I was just imagining, even when Jesus becomes at one with God or someone else while still on earth, that will be a huge visible sign. But who's actually going to see it because they're looking through the filters? Who's actually going to wake up to that? So yeah, I think it's very dependent on our removing all of those injuries and beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. Elisa.
Just to add on to what Alicia just said, I happened to just watch a video where Jesus said, "Oh, you'll know for sure when I'm at one with God. You won't miss it." So, and even people who are the most unconscious, there's going to be a big polarization, is what he was talking about. Hey, like, people are just going to hate, not even be able to be around his presence or Mary's presence or whoever, Eloise's, whoever's at one with God first. So that's all I had to add.
Awesome.
Then
Thanks.
second and third and fourth, keep on coming.
Exactly.
We don't need just one. Let's
yeah,
we gotta demonstrate that this is for everyone.
Thousands of us.
And how different each unique nature is, how like that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
That would be very cool. Can't wait for the day. That would be awesome. Excellent. Any other additions, comments? No. Okay, we're ticking through these pretty good. Okay, so question 4 is kind of a 2-part question of how I kind of broke it down. So I named it Moving Mountains. There are mountains, physical, mental, and spiritual, he replied, and the latter are quite as difficult to remove as the former, perhaps even more so, and require equally the power of God, but it can be done. Have you not witnessed the removal of mountains of deformity? So this is at the bottom of page 78. So this kind of goes back to that question. Do we believe miracles can happen here on earth? So should I stop there before I continue on to ask the rest of the questions? Does people want to ask that? Okay, so let's go for that one. Who believes that we can have miracles here on earth? Excellent. All right. So
Do you want to give examples?
yeah.
Who wants to give examples of miracles, Lisa?
Oh, sorry. I'm having the same thought about, say, Jesus being at one with God. You know, obviously he said, I haven't performed miracles yet, right? Because I'm not at one with God yet. I can't truly demonstrate to you, which will significantly increase your faith until I am at one with God again. So I think the signs become very apparent when you have somebody in that condition where they're no longer having sin while on earth. That's all I had to add. Yeah.
What other miracles? Who else believe in miracles and examples of miracles? Michaela?
I find that I'm seeing miracles happening more in like not so much someone is healed or something, but as more and more, just an example, technology is coming out that's harmful, I'm starting to see this amazing technology that's also coming out that can counteract that harm, but also use that harm to create good. And to me, that is a miracle that there's all these different technologies or healing tools that are coming through to support us.
Thank you.
Very cool. Excellent. Alicia.
Yeah, and that's what I was not gonna say that, but there was something about that miracle thing, is because maybe we physically don't notice so much, but you know, spirits are giving us things all the time, like they're performing miracles for us all the time here. And what is our definition of a miracle? Well, it's really just God's laws in play, but that does seem like a miracle in many ways. So I feel like it's happening all the time, like the example Michaela gave of there's these terrible things happening, but there's these amazing things happening too. And so it feels like constantly, if we develop that ability to be able to connect more with our spirit guides and our spirit friends, then we will see that more. We'll see that happening more because they'll be able to help us create miracles in our own lives.
I think this is a good question to ask Aphraar.
Oh gosh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a good question.
So
Because now I have more questions.
You know what the next chapter is called? One question at a time. That's what I got from it. That's mine. I love it. So the question we can ask at the end of our discussion is, what miracles have I experienced and received in my life? That's a question we'll ask towards the end. We'll just keep going for now. But I feel like there's something very important here for us to get in us, that there's a little knock happening here. So I'm like, okay, we'll ask this one. It's important for us to change.
I kind of feel that too. Like I because the question that came up after, as Alicia was talking, was so do we need it to be huge to be a miracle, or can we say a little prayer and have that prayer answered and that's a miracle? Like,
I'm gonna let Aphraar answer your question. That's a beautiful question. But
Like, do we really need to move mountains in order for it to be a miracle? But yeah,
well, are you
okay.
saying little things are not mountains? That's probably the misperception.
Or there we go. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Big things turn on small little events, small little choices here and there that you thought were insignificant, and here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now I don't know who was first. We'll go alphabetical. Alicia first.
I just wanted to say thank you for inspiring a couple more karaoke songs. I believe in miracles.
Which
And-
is that it's the kind of a poppy song, right?
yeah, and the other one
Okay.
was that you just said was "Say a Little Prayer for Me." Da-da-da. I can't remember the tune exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are good.
I'm one of those that always have a song in my head, always, like a full, real song, not just little hums. So that's a good one to have in my head.
Nice. Awesome. Michaela.
I loved what Alicia just said about that miracles are just examples of God's laws happening. Like I'd never considered that, but that is miraculous. And I think the miracle would be is like the human choosing to align themselves with God's laws. But that's cool. That means we've got miracles available to us every moment, all the time, if we just choose to align ourselves with God's laws.
Absolutely. That's very overwhelming. But
Alicia?
yeah.
Sorry, I just took Alicia's hand down. Sorry, I just don't want to forget you.
Oh, I know Michaela will be with me on this one. I was like, I just have to look at a flower and I'm like, that's a miracle in itself. So for me, there's miracles everywhere.
Yeah.
So before we move on, the 14 are back. Like, drop the mic. Like the 14 are back.
Yeah.
So that's a miracle. We have the gift of enlightenment. That's a freaking miracle. And for me personally, the big miracle is that God has forgiven us. I just blows me away. We have been forgiven of everything as soon as we do it. And that's a huge miracle in itself for me. Because when you start to feel into your pain and then you're going, and that got forgiven, how is that possible? That's a huge, So anyway, we will move on, but this is important. Oh, go ahead, Michaela.
Oh,
this just seems a good moment for me to go. But so thank you. Bye.
Bye, Michaela. Okay, so then let's sort of move on to the second part of that question. Before Diomedes offered the invocation, which secured that visible response, he had assured himself that his and their unaided power were put forth and exhausted, and being confident that of himself he could do no more. He invoked the strength which was beyond and above, and God would have broken troth if he had not honored such faith. He had not to detail his desires, elaborate his wish, or discourse on the benefits and glory to accrue. His cry was a prophetic thanksgiving for the strength he and every soul knew would be given to them. He was conscious of the fact that his requirements were already known. Everything which could be done in the hall was completed, and there was a pause in the service, an interval only to be terminated by divine action. And the waiting faith of the multitude captured that action by storm. So on page 79. So this is the first paragraph. It was continued from page 78. So this paragraph kind of pissed me off. So basically I got stuck in the anger and said, well, we have to exhaust everything in our power before we can ask God for help. How are we supposed to do that? And how are we supposed to know what to do without God's guidance in the beginning, not in the end? What actions do we need to do before we can ask for God's help? That's I got stuck in the anger of it. So I would appreciate feedback. What everything kind of, what your thoughts are. Alicia.
I haven't got a lot of clarity, but I'll say something. So for the first question, I felt that to show desire through my actions, and the more I show that, the more God can actually help me. So rather than it being like tepid tea, that makes sense, it's like I'm going to have really hot tea rather than tepid tea. Like I have to put my fullness into it, more than my fullness in a way. And I felt like the more I'm being self-responsible, this is my subject at the moment, the more I'm being self-responsible for all my emotions, for all the times I'm irresponsible, for all of that, the more I can rely on God. It feels like that, but I need to be self-responsible in order to be God reliant somehow. Or not, it's not like I have to be that first, but it feels like the more self-responsible I am, the more I'll be able to rely on God. It sort of goes together somehow for me. And so I felt like I have to listen more to my passions, and I have to get to know myself better. God's given me a character and personality, so the more I know myself, this is going to help me to do this. And I have to have a full-hearted, like it has to be a real sincere, full-hearted desire. And the more likely God is going to help me. Oh, I froze.
We
a little
lost
bit
your
there.
last 20 seconds there.
Oh, I think I was just saying about the more full-hearted I am, and the more I allow that childlike heart to come out, the easier it is for God to be able to help me.
Right.
And
so it goes in that fervor. That
yes, exactly. Yeah.
That to find, we need to find our fervor.
Yeah.
Right.
And this paragraph, by the way, it feels like it's encouraging me to act through, although personally I'm in a lot of resistance at the moment, but it feels encouraging to me to act, to take an action, and the action doesn't need to necessarily be me physically doing something. The action could be, let me just sit and feel my desire, let it really expand within me, let me feel it and imagine the possibility of that desire coming into fruition.
Right.
And I usually, you do have to take an action, because when it comes to myself, with being a single mom, trying to go to school, praying, help me. And then eventually I took an action, like I'm just going to jump off into space. And then suddenly everything came rolling out and creating a straight path. So I waited till I took action, like an actual action, like actually filling up a form, sending in something, registering for something. There was an action. But there's always been a question in my head too, going, if I knew you would come true for me, I would have done it sooner, but I didn't know if you were going to come true for me. So I waited in my hands and I finally did something, and then you showed up. And what's going on? So I have a similar question around why I had to take action, and then resources showed up.
Yeah, and take actions on those little nudges, like especially when I wake up first thing in the morning. If I then like, oh, okay, I'm going to take an action. I take an action pretty, to send a message to somebody or to suggest something for myself or whatever. In that moment is my time when I'm very clear that take an action in that moment for sure.
Okay.
During the day, so I get distracted, but first thing in the morning, I'm like, yes.
So it has to be even just a little bit of a step forward into it. Like Mila said, just, filling out forms. It was like, that was your step into it. That's your action towards it. So then God could step in and help. Or
So I just got an image given to me because I'm talking to Jill. So this example makes sense. It's like saying, well, if you don't plant the seed, what's the rest of the soil going to do to grow the plant? So that's
all right, that totally makes sense.
Okay.
I get it now.
That's a good one. But then this chapter is talking about you pouring everything you have into it, right? Like there's this, like, what is that about?
Well, and that's kind of where I think where my anger kind of got triggered was, there's the whole corral, there's thousands of people there, and they were all, trying to help these individuals that were so deformed from their injuries. And it's like, God didn't step in and help them before this. Like, we had to get thousands of people together to have this, yes, absolutely granted, spectacular, beautiful moment. But like, couldn't have God stepped in before that? Like, what couldn't have God stepped in when they were alive? This is where my anger comes in.
Oh, that's good. I mean, you know what? Stay in that. Just stay in it. These are the kind of burning questions that take decades to release and get the answer, and then my soul gets developed in a certain way in the journey of staying in the question, staying in the pain. Like, that's a good one. So many things to clear. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But if there are comments, please go ahead.
Lisa.
Oops. Well, but now I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't answer because it's
No,
good for Jill to
come on.
stay in her struggle.
Well, I'll stay. Don't worry. I'll stay.
Well, when I listened to Mary's book group, Jesus happened to be at one of the meetings, and he did mention that it would have been very easy for Myhanene and Siamedes, or Myhanene alone, to heal those people right upon entering the spirit life. So it could have been taken right away once they transitioned into their spirit world bodies. But that involving all the people was this beautiful process that opened everybody's hearts, and everybody grew and learned, as we talked about last week with Selena. So that's one answer, that it could be answered very easily, but maybe that doesn't resolve your frustration, which is probably good. Stay with it.
No, my frustration is like, why did God allow it to happen in the first place? That's my frustration. So yeah, absolutely. Alicia, did you have, I know you had your hand up, so.
I did, and then I forgot what I was going to say, but I remembered now. It was, I feel like maybe we have some distortions around having to work hard at something. And this is coming from a passionate place of really wanting to help and support and be present with this. But we have distortions around, it's going to be hard work. I don't know, that's how it feels to me. Like, I can't just do it myself. I've got to have everybody else come in. Why can't I just do it myself? I don't know if there's some distortion that we have around that. What do you feel?
I would agree that I have for sure. I can only speak for me. Around, if it's the addiction of, if it's meant to be, it will be easy. If it's meant to be, it'll just happen, right? That's, some false beliefs that I have, that I don't have to actually put the work into it because it's meant to be, right? And so putting the hard work in is something that I have, some of the times I have issues with. Yeah, and
sometimes if it's something we really love, like you love gardening, so when it's something you really love, like time flies, for example, like you're just so in it. And I think that's when we're in that, but it's learning to have that in all aspects of our life, not in just the things we want to do, like cleaning the toilet. Let's try to be passionate about that. But of course, most of us are not in that place yet. But I think that's our goal.
And that you're willing to do the research, and you're willing to experiment, and you're willing to ask questions, You're willing to study. You're willing to go across town and talk to somebody else and know that. Look how much effort goes in where you're taking responsibility for figuring it out. And therefore, things then come to you. I like what Alicia said. There's something about the responsibility principle and God being there to help. Like there's something there that got my wheels turning, Alicia. Really
Yeah.
curious to hear more about what you figured out with that.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Thank you, Alicia. Lisa.
So yeah, just along with what Mila was just saying, when we're taking full personal self-responsibility, we're the least amount in addiction, we're most aligned with God, and God's laws can most assist, and we'll have the
Oh, good
purest
point.
desires. So
Good
it's,
point.
yeah, that,
I love that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. That's awesome discussion. Okay, do we have time for the last one?
No, I think I would like
Yeah.
to go. I mean, the question
Really wasn't
is
a
really
question anyway, so
good.
yeah.
Well, hey, does this chapter open the jar of hope for you? That's a good question.
Alicia.
Well, I'll just say yes. Maybe it's only slightly ajar, but it definitely does. It's helped me. That whole thing about put your all into it. Whether it's working at something, researching something, experimenting with something, or that it's my all in developing my desire to have a prayer for something. Yeah, I feel like it's touched something for me for sure.
Well, when you're coming from your own nature, as you get to know who you are and you're expressing your nature, the expression of your nature for the purpose of prayer is very important, because there's something about that. So yeah. So we're going to ask Aphraar a question. What miracles have I experienced and received in my life? And then we'll come back and share our answers. All right, so let's share our answers to the question, what miracles have I experienced, received in my life? Or at some point we can just ask for today. What did I get today? Who wants to start? Lisa?
it was very emotional to do this. What a great question, Mila. Yeah, I just sat down on the floor and I felt Aphraar come, and I just got this series of flashes of all of these gifts throughout my life, including discovering divine truth for the first time, and then getting to meet Jesus in person and hug him, and Mary, and go to a seminar and receive direct feedback, and then flashes of being in Australia and the brothers and sisters on the path that I got to meet, Michael included, and Cecily, and then living with Robin, like getting that sister who I got to be with for a year and a half, who's so beautiful and loving, and Alicia, and all these times I was almost homeless. And right when I needed it, it was like 2 days from needing to have a home, I would always get, it's just, there's so much, including, yeah, just a lot of things. Times when I was very sick and I got the right acupuncturist to help me, and then connecting with who I feel is my soulmate from when I was 15. Just a lot. So it was very emotional. What a good question to ask. Thank you for that, Mila.
Alicia triggered it. So thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Lisa. Selena?
What I was shown was 3 very definitive times in my life where God was brought into my life when I really needed it, when I could have really gone sideways.
Wow.
3 times, like when I was a child, and like reminders of God, like this is what's important. And yeah, 3 times, very, like I say, at times where I was really in crisis, in a very positive way, God came back, or came, like made it clear how important it was for me to stay connected to God.
Thank you. Next. Virginia.
I was shown actually different times that I wasn't thinking that I was praying, but I really had a desire, and how it just happened. It just came about and happened. And it wasn't like, that it's just like, boom, here it is right now.
Wow.
Even when like I first visited British Columbia and I was living in Ontario, and I thought, if I ever have the opportunity to move here, I just want to live there. I want to be there. And I had 2 little kids, like, and a marriage that was going like, but I thought, well, if it's going to end, it'll end here, it'll end there. Like, it's just, and then the opportunity showed up within a year to move here, to move to BC. There's just been several times where these, not necessarily was I just praying for something, but just really had a pure desire for something. And that's happened a few times in my life during those years where I was not praying at all. Well, I didn't feel like I was praying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was praying.
Wow. That's a good one. Thank you. You're going to keep growing on those ideas you just received. They're going, wait a minute. Now you can start growing. Like, I didn't think I was praying, but whatever happened there, the miracle showed up. So you can see it continuing to expand and expand.
It's actually helped me answer some of those other questions as to why are some of my prayers being answered and some are not.
Well, you think they're not.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think these are things that you have to go forward 200 years and then look back. And then you see it. Thank you. Alicia?
Yeah, it's like we focus often on the bad things and not the good things sometimes. Like we don't see the benefits, but we see all the things that are correcting. The first thing that came to me, interestingly, was that my mum was open enough for me to channel her. That was for me pretty amazing. That was the first thing that came. And then that I became good friends with my dad, both of them in spirit, by the way, because I'd hated him before when he was on earth. So that those were the first 2 things that came to me. And then I got Jesus and Mary coming to a town near me when I'd only just learned about divine truth.
Holy smoke, that's a miracle. Like,
that was a pretty good miracle. And as
right
Lisa said, the hug, like I have never forgotten that hug. That was like, that did it for me, that hug. That was enough.
wow.
Even though I didn't get any concepts and stuff, and even for a few years, I didn't have the opportunity to listen, but I remembered the hug. So that sort of held me. And in that holding place, when I was needing to be, well, eventually I healed to become healthier. That was definitely a prayer that was mixed in with faith. That was big time. I just knew that would happen at that point. So that felt like a miracle. I felt like just receiving God's love feels like a huge miracle. And I feel like, well, the last few years, I feel like every month feels like a miracle. Like, oh, I got my rent money. This is good. So right now, I feel like when I asked this question, I was buzzing in a way of feeling like miracles are happening constantly. It's
Uh-huh.
just about removing this haze from
Uh-huh.
in front of your eyes.
I think that's what Aphraar wants us to receive.
Yeah.
That's the feeling Aphraar wants us. That's the veil Aphraar
Yeah.
wants us to get. Like, you know, we have no idea how much miracles we're receiving. How much?
Yeah.
That's the term I have to use. Not how many, how much.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Jill?
Same, very similar type of feeling to Alicia, that I was like flooded with memories right from
Wow.
a baby to now, like just flooded with, and I was like, wait, too much, too much. And but it just left me with this feeling that the miracles happen every day, like you could even say every second of every day. Like it's just something that it's a part of us, it's a part of
Okay.
who we are.
Okay.
That because we're God's children, God creates miracles.
Yep.
Why shouldn't we be able to create miracles? And they can be tiny. They can be something as walking along, seeing an ant cross on the sidewalk and going, oh, whoops, I step over it. And instead of stepping on it, kind of thing. That's a miracle. It's like, it was like, how is that a miracle? But you know, every little thing is just a miracle. We just have to be able to unveil ourselves or be able to see it, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
I like where this is taking us. There's a lot of offshoot. I'm going to put a little reminder in my wall to ask every night, what miracles did I receive today? Some days I could be pretty grumpy, so it could get interesting, but thank you. Mike and Rosemary, it's really nice to see you today. Hi, Rosemary. Good to see you. But Mike, do you wish to answer the question? You're mute.
I meant to did it backwards again. It feels understated. It was that God's love and truth found me when I really needed it and didn't really know it was there and didn't have hope for it and didn't really want it. Or maybe I didn't want it, but I just didn't know how to get there. But it found me.
Yeah. That would be a pretty huge miracle. Thank you. Okay. The answer that I got was the faith that I have going forward, the miracles I receive. I have absolute faith that there is a God, there is hope for me, all will be made well again. Whatever it looks like right now, someday all will be made well, all will be repaired. No matter what, my soul will be redeemed. It will happen. That is a concrete faith in me. And that is a miracle because I absolutely believe in it and I'm walking forward, absolutely expecting it. And it pulls me through a lot of darkness that this will happen. It's done. So it's a miracle that I have such strong faith. Somebody's been doing some repair in my sleep state. My guides must be putting on little trinkets in me while I'm asleep. But it is a miracle that I have this strong of faith. Yeah. Jill, beautiful leading and beautiful questions. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun, actually. I deal in daily, my job is to teach, and I end up teaching people that do not want to be there and do not do the work. So this was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you everyone for the gift you give to the facilitator every week. And And let's see what kind of experiments you guys want to take from prayer and miracles. And this could be a very important chapter.